Hello and welcome to the official Scottish Rugby podcast. I've been left by myself today. Mossy is still over in Japan commentating for World Rugby Feed. Jamie is in transit on his way home. I've been over and now back. There's been a fair amount happening since we last came to you. A few big rugby matches. Our women's result, 47-5 against South Africa. Not so good result in our first game in the World Cup against Ireland. And then the ability to bounce back, to turn it round, to get what was needed out of that game against Samoa with the bonus point victory, although for anybody watching it, it was probably only the last 6 minutes or so that were enjoyable. If you're anything like me anyway, I was up to high dough watching that game, but a brilliant result. More to come, more that will need to come for the Russia and Japan game. I'll be joined today by Ali Price, unfortunately getting injured over in Japan. He's now back home. He's going to phone in from Glasgow as he tries to get that foot right. We'll have a good look into the games that have gone by, as well as what we can expect for the rest of this tournament. Also be joined by Head of Girls and Women's Rugby at Scottish Rugby, Gemma Fay, who's over in South Africa after that brilliant result for the women's team on Monday. And lastly by Sheila Begbie, Director of Rugby Development, as she's unveiled a new strategy to try and make sure that the grassroots of rugby are as strong as possible here in Scotland. As promised, we're joined by Gemma Fay, Head of Girls and Women's Rugby here at Scottish Rugby, as she is live from South Africa ahead of their second test match on Saturday. Gemma, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you, Al?
Very good, thank you. There's a fair amount happening rugby-wise at the moment. And a big result for your guys, 47 points to 5. You must have been delighted with that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a long lead-in for Philip in terms of him getting his first match as head coach, and the first time that we've been in the Southern Hemisphere on a tour. So a lot of firsts on Monday, but an absolutely excellent performance by the players. And
from your own point of view, you're over there, you'll be working closely with the players as well, some of the off-field stuff. What can you tell us about women's rugby in South Africa?
Yeah, so I'm actually meeting up with the head of the women's rugby for South Africa tomorrow, so we're catching up for a coffee just to exchange ideas. They've been pretty quiet in terms of 15s wise, in terms that since the last World Cup, but what they have been doing is working a lot on their youth setup, and I know that they're trying to bring in a lot of young players into their setup, and they've had some new caps in the game on Monday, so they've really kind of gone back to basics in terms of that. It'll be really interesting as we're developing the youth game in our country to see if there's anything that we can learn from each other around that. Yeah. But in whole, it's well received. I think we're expecting quite a big crowd on Saturday for the main match, and it was a great atmosphere for the girls to play on a Monday.
Fantastic. So what about from a Scotland point of view then? You talked briefly there about South Africa. What do you want to see out of this tour, as well as obviously results? They always help, but what are the biggest learnings for our squad?
I think for us, this is a massive year. This time next year, we will know whether or not we've qualified for the World Cup through the European playoff system that Rugby Europe are putting in place. So we've essentially got a year to get this team into position where we can win two semi-final matches and a final, so 3 games in a row. It's not a lot of time for any head coach to come in, so this time that we have together with the team is really, really important for the coaching team, the management team, to one, to get to know each other, and to implement kind of new tactics, new ways of playing, try and bring new players in, which we have on the strip, which is fantastic. So for us, it's an accelerated learning. As much time as we can get these players together over the next year is invaluable. And looking ahead to September next year, the squad's going to be spending a lot of time together. If we don't qualify directly through the European tournament, there's a World Repechage where we'll have to spend even more time together. So the whole plan is around about giving these players opportunities to spend large amount of times away together, because that's quite difficult when you've got a big group of players to be able to maintain that and then deliver on a rugby field, but also the opportunity to play against teams we've never played against before and styles we've never played against before that we may come up against in the World Repechage or at the World Cup itself. So this is the first step in that process.
So you mentioned there a bit off field as well as the rugby being massively important, but you'll know from all your tours in football, I know from my rugby tours, that a lot of it is off field. A lot of it is building a squad, building the right environment, building a team. What have you been doing to do that? I know you've been doing things away from the rugby field. Is there anything you can share with us back here?
Yeah, so absolutely, it's about understanding each other. So if you're going to spend a period of time with a group of 26 players and 26 women, we have to understand how each other works and when we need space and when we need to be together. The other thing is, whenever you're playing against a country, a new country, it's important to understand what motivates them as a nation. So yesterday the team went to Robben Island to kind of understand a little bit of that political history, which is really important because it puts a context around you're not just playing against another 15 rugby players, you're playing against 15 rugby players that come from a different culture, a different historical background, and the importance that they put on that game and what they've come through to get to where they are may be different from the context that you are as a Scotland playing. So you're understanding that you're playing more than just a rugby match. You're playing a nation and all that nation's history and culture. So that's really important. So that was a big thing yesterday, and we'll continue to do different things like that and challenge the players to develop, not just as rugby players, but as people as well.
Before we move on to talk about your game on Saturday in a little bit of detail, a lot of your squad keeping half an eye over in Japan and seeing how the men's squad are going?
Yeah, absolutely. They were watching the match against Samoa, so that was good, and it's really interesting for the girls just to watch about how to manage a game. So expectation is not just to win, but you've got additional things in which you need to do, secure bonus points. How do you manage a situation like that? How do you? And I think the men did it excellently, managing it, keeping patient. Keep pushing on until they got what they needed out of the match. So yeah, absolutely, one eye on what's happening over in Japan, and we've had Mark Dodson. I was on the phone the other day congratulating the girls, really interested in how we're progressing, etc. So I think Monday was a very good day for Scottish Rugby. Absolutely
it was. Now looking ahead to your game on Saturday, the opportunity to watch the game back here through Scottish Rugby's online channels. What do you expect from that game? A tougher game for Scotland, or?
Yeah, I think, look, whenever you have a performance in a scoreline like that in a first match, and you've got two match test series, you would be foolish to think you were going to get exactly the same. I think South Africa, they are a strong physical team. I mean, their pack weight must be significant because they're strong women, and I think our scrum did particularly well just to hold up against that. So I imagine that they will increase their physicality in that game. I think that they'll defend more wide than they did previously, but the flip side of that is potentially opens up opportunities for us in the middle of the field. But I think for us, the most important thing is that we back up what we did. We want to gain consistency, and that's the things that great teams do, is they consistently perform, and that's what we're aiming for. So if we can get consistency of performance, there was a few things in defence we weren't too happy with, so if we can tighten up on that. And there's also a couple of things in attack that we think that we could have done a little bit better and got a few more scores. We think we've left a few out there. So I think we're looking just for that next step forward to deal with whatever they throw at us, but also to improve our game.
Fantastic, Gemma. It's going to be a fantastic test match. Please pass on our best from everybody over here for the previous result, and pass on our best of luck for the game on Saturday. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, Al.
Thanks, Gemma. Great to hear from Gemma. Obviously, the girls are in a great place. A fantastic result on Monday. We heard from Philip Doyle post that match to give us a bit of insight from his point of view.
Absolutely thrilled for the girls. I'm really delighted for them, especially with the performance they put in. They were absolutely exceptional. I always said that there was a core group of girls out here, and they are absolutely. I'm just thrilled that they were able to deliver on the game plan. And these core girls, the leadership, really delivered. Everybody delivered, but it's the nature of the delivery is that impresses me most. So I'm just delighted that what I thought I saw definitely is what I'm seeing.
We're joined by Ali Price, not long off the back of a flight from Japan. Ali, first and foremost, commiserations. Sad to see you picking up that injury. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad actually. I'm not too bad now. It all kind of happened really quick. So, obviously got hurt in the game, and then within 2 days I was sort of flying back and had my operation the next day, and that's kind of been me. Disappointing. I don't think it really hit me until I got home, to be honest with you, Al. I was sat in the flat on Thursday morning, and obviously the World Cup games were still going on, and I was like, that's like watching it, thinking that's where I should be, and I was obviously back in Glasgow watching it on the TV. So that was probably the low point, I guess. I think after that though, and after I got fixed up, I kind of was like, right, well, what's done is done. You can't play with a fractured foot, so I might as well get on with it. And thankfully, it's not too bad, so I should be back fairly quickly, which is good. Although obviously it's disappointing. I'm not still in Japan.
You've got an incredible attitude, Ali. I remember you doing your knee when you must have been about, how old were you? About 12 or so when you first came into Glasgow?
Yeah, a few years ago, 20 I think I was.
You were 20, and that's when we brought in the nickname Smiler, because every single day, I think maybe bar one where you came in to do your rehab, there was a smile on your face.
Yeah, well, that was obviously a lot. I was out for 9 months of that one, so that was a bit of a slog, but I guess you got to take the positives. Life could be worse, I always think. Yeah, I'm gutted. Like, I've got to wait another 4 years for even another chance to get picked for a World Cup. So, in that like regard, yeah, I'm disappointed. But it's like what my mum said: you can't play on a broken foot, and she's right. Like, there's nothing I can do.
Yeah, that's what it is.
I went out there and sort of tried to do my thing, and I came out second best in a tackle, and I guess that's that. There's no point in beating yourself up. I guess I'm on the men's now, and I've got a whole season to look forward to.
Well, everybody from a Scotland and Glasgow point of view, we want you back as quickly as possible. You also showed how tough you are by playing on in that game as well.
Hard as nails, mate.
Hard as nails. That's always, when people say to me, what do you think, Ali Price? I say hard as nails. It's always the first thing that pops into my head.
Yeah, I get that a lot, actually.
So I'm going to make it worse, because we're going to talk about the Rugby World Cup, which is a place that you've clearly said you'd rather be over there. But thank you very much for coming on. I think your attitude to it is incredible. It's definitely the right attitude to have as well. And there is something, as you say, about when you get that point where something's been fixed and you feel as if you're in a recovery period, as opposed to a period when you're looking back over your shoulder. But let's talk rugby. Let's talk first and foremost about that Ireland game. And it didn't, from a Scotland point of view, get off to the best of starts. We've kind of done it a wee bit to death, but the biggest learnings out of it seem to be physicality, and that's what we saw against Samoa. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I actually thought the boys that got the shout against Samoa in the back row were brilliant. I thought Maggie, considering he'd just been brought into the squad and obviously got given the 6 shirt, I thought some of his ball carrying and physicality was brilliant. I don't really know. You can say it's a mindset, this and that. I'm not so sure. Like you said, it was something that we really lacked against Ireland. Like, Ireland are a good team, and you have to match them on the gain line and match them physically. And I feel like we just let ourselves down in that first game, but it's something we definitely brought into the Samoa match.
Golly, the physicality thing, it's not like a decision, we're going to be physical, because you're going to be physical in every game, but what you need moments in the games that allow you to bring out that physicality. And sometimes it's not you. You mentioned Magnus there, Jamie, probably another good example, Jamie Ritchie. They brought moments that just lifted the energy for everybody else. How good is it? I mean, from your point of view, it's not necessarily, well, it will be, we're talking about how tough you are, it's not necessarily going to be the physical moments that you'll bring, but do you agree with me that there's moments you need, especially earlier on in a game, that bring that energy to everybody else?
Oh, definitely, and it's massive momentum shifts. You know, if you get a good turnover or a big hit dislodges the ball, and suddenly you've got the scrum and you're in possession, it brings a lot of energy, and it's things like that can change the momentum of a match. Suddenly we've got attacking ball, or we've got counter-attack ball to play off, and that's when defences are at their weakest, and you can take them on. So I think obviously there's a difference between Ireland and Samoa in terms of where they're at in the rankings and all the rest of it. I get that, but we just didn't have enough of that against Ireland, and maybe you put that down to the opposition, and they forced those errors on us, or they didn't let us impose ourselves physically.
They controlled the game.
We got that against Samoa.
Yeah,
but 100% I agree.
They're good at it.
Momentum. Yeah, they are good at it. And we sometimes we're our own worst enemies with drop balls and such. which doesn't help, and that all contributes. Obviously, we never went into that Ireland game looking for a performance like that. We never do. You always go out on the field to give your all. But sometimes you have to look at the opposition and what they did to stifle that, I guess.
Well, let's put the Ireland game and the Samoa game to bed, because ultimately they're done. Ultimately, we've got 5 points out of the first two games, and a big opportunity now to qualify. Japan's game against Ireland, though, that threw the cat amongst the pigeons. They're not only the result, but their performance as well.
Yeah, I mean, they look at quality sides. Definitely can't be underestimated anymore, I don't think. We've obviously got to get through this Russia game and hopefully come away with 5 points, but it's sort of set that result against Ireland and Japan sort of set up our pool to be pretty open, and well, I guess at the moment mathematically you can't really tell who's gonna be the top two that go through.
Ireland took a wee bit of stick about kicking the ball out at the end of the game, but ultimately by doing that and getting the bonus point, it's now within their hands still to qualify, depending on what happens between Scotland, Japan, and the games before that. But if Ireland get 5 points in both games, they ultimately go through.
Absolutely, I agree with you. It's the right thing to do. We're at a World Cup here, and sort of every point matters, albeit a losing bonus point. Like, they could easily have given away a penalty and Japan slot 3, and then they're coming away from that game with nothing. So I know everyone's all for running rugby and let's play till the final whistle, this and that, but on the field you've got to make these smart decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let's talk about the Russia. You should get through the Russia game. There's an element of that. 5 points. I think 5 points is essential. But how do you approach a game like that when you know that you need to get those 5 points? The Samoa game, we left it reasonably late, but ultimately we got it. It doesn't matter how you get there, as long as you get there. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think even watching the game this morning between France and the USA, I think it was 12-9 after 65 minutes, and suddenly the final score was 33-9 to France. I mean, sometimes it takes you an hour to break down these sides. And look, there's going to be changes for this game with the short turnaround before Japan. So there's going to be lads that haven't been involved yet that are itching to get out there and show their hand for selection. So I think in terms of the mindset going into it, I think obviously first and foremost get the win, but there's boys going out there to prove a point, which ultimately I hope and I'm sure it will lead to getting the 5 points.
Which will lead us on to an incredible game. I mean, everybody's looking at it against Japan. The host nation with a strong chance of going into a quarter final, and us potentially again coming down to who gets what bonus point, or whether Scotland can get 5 points. But ultimately, it's going to be a massive game of rugby.
Yeah, huge. I think everyone will be watching that. That's for sure. I think all being well, if both teams, so if Japan pick up their 5 points against Samoa and we get our 5 against Russia, I think we have to limit them to less than 2 match points, I believe, something like that.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a huge game, and I think, if Scottish fans or the boys in general are in any doubt about how good Japan are nowadays, I mean, look at the Ireland game. There's going to be no sort of, we're playing Japan, let's take it for granted kind of thing. This is a huge match.
What about any of the other countries, Ali? You talked about the fact that you watched the game this morning. Will you watch a lot of other rugby over this next few weeks as well, or will you try and close the door on it as you get your foot better?
Yeah, I'm not so sure. Like I said, when I first got back off the flight, and then there was games on that next morning, and I sat down and I watched. I can't remember what the game was. I watched about 20 minutes of it, and I was like, I'm over this. I don't want to watch it. So I turned that off. I watched obviously the Scotland game. I'll watch it here and there. Until it starts getting into the interesting bits.
Your mum,
I'll probably give it a miss.
Go and see your mum. Your mum will get you doing some yoga. Your mum's a yoga teacher, is she not?
She is, yeah, based in Troon. She's been up to see me. She's a bit of a faffer, my mum. So I got back to obviously had my operation the day after in Edinburgh, and she was annoyed that I didn't contact her to come and pick me up after the operation. I got one of my friends to bring me back, and she was like, "Why would you do that?" And I was like, well, "You fat, like you'd come into that hospital as if I'd had open heart surgery. I broke my foot. I'll be all right. I'm a young lad. I've survived. All right."
You be nice to your mum. Remember, her wee baby boy's just come home from Japan with a broken foot. I had to go in and get it fixed.
Anyway, she caught up with me the following day. She's all right.
Good. Well, I massively appreciate you coming on and sharing your insight. I'm sure it's going to be an intriguing few weeks over in Japan. Obviously, Glasgow's home season kicks off this Friday night. Will you be down watching that game?
Yeah, I'll come down and cheer on the boys. Hopefully see a reaction from those guys as well following last week. I'm sure they're all disappointed against a good Cheetah side, albeit. But yeah, looking forward to getting back to Scotland.
Brilliant, Ali. Great to chat, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Catch you later. Cheers.
Talked quite a lot about the Japan game coming up, but ultimately there's a massive game against Russia in between. We got some insight from the camp as to how the guys are going to approach that game.
It's kind of tough, Finn's such a quality player, so he's kind of running the ship week in, week out, and it's obviously I'm in a good position to learn off him, and as I was at Glasgow the year before, so he's matured a lot as a player over in France as well, so it's been good just rubbing shoulders with him again, and but obviously hopefully a bit of game time soon. There's been a lot of questions looking at Japan, but the fact of the matter is if we don't turn up this week against Russia, then it won't matter anyway, so massive game, and I think if I'm playing I'll be very up for it and itching to go, as I'm sure a few other boys will be. It's been a lifelong dream and things like that, and we've wanted to come to a World Cup since I was a little boy. I remember I went to the 2007 World Cup in Paris, and we were at the 3rd, 4th place playoff. I remember it, and we were watching France versus Argentina, and I said I want to play in the World Cup, and that was it. And then so we're here, so I did that the other night, so yeah, it's pretty cool. It's at all stages of your career, like when you first get your professional debut, you just want to do it again straight away, and then you get used to that, and then you get your Scotland debut, and you keep playing, and then you've played Six Nations, and I think now I've played in the World Cup game, and I want to play more, and it's because it's the biggest stage. It's high pressure. It's everything. It's kind of the highest. It's the pinnacle of international sport, I suppose. So.
We're now joined by Sheila Begbie, the Director of Rugby Development here at Scottish Rugby. Sheila, hello, good to have you on.
Hi, good morning.
You're just over a week since you released your department strategy and how to develop all things rugby development from the grassroots right up. Can you give us a few of the key points? What can we expect to see?
I think from our perspective, having worked with clubs and listened to clubs and schools, some of the key areas that we need to collectively tackle in the game are around retention and transition of players, so just making sure that we're working with clubs and schools to support players through the transition phases in their journey. It's also about reviewing the adult male season structure and competition structure to make sure that we've got something that's fit for purpose, where players can actually commit to and where coaches can commit to as well, but very much based on our department facilitating the conversation with the clubs. So what we will end up with is what the clubs actually have asked for. And then we're reviewing the schools and youth conferences have been going for the last 4 years. So it's about reviewing the conference structure to make sure that we've got a structure that will deliver for schools, but it also supports delivery for young players that are within our youth club game as well. And then something that we've not had as a department is looking at providing clear and inclusive pathways for players, coaches, referees and volunteers in the game, and that's something that we'll publish next year so that everybody in the game knows what the opportunities are for them in the game.
What are the key messages coming out of the clubs? What are the clubs asking you and your department to do in particular?
I think some of the things that we talked about earlier on, I think there are great issues in terms of retaining some of the players through different ages and stages of the game. And I would say that, with scrums, our new database, our player registration database, that will give us great intel on the game going forward, that it will be able to identify for us stages in the game where players are dropping out, so that we can work with clubs, so we can work with schools about interventions in the game to support keeping players in the game. There's been a lot of discussion around the adult male season structure and the competition structure. There are some challenges there. There are some challenges at the lower end of the game or in reserve league rugby around fulfilment of fixtures. So there are some key issues for the clubs, and what I would say is that through the strategy we've listened to some of the issues for the clubs, and we're actually trying to address some of the key issues that the clubs have identified through our regional strategy, through our national strategy, and the reality is that it's not just about what Scottish Rugby will do, it's about how we collectively work to take the game forward, because at the end of the day, the clubs are responsible for their clubs, they're responsible for recruitment and retention of players in their clubs, but that's something that absolutely our teams in the region can support them with.
Well, that leads me on very nicely to my next question, and I was going to, there'll be a lot of people listening who are attached to rugby clubs, who are players at rugby clubs or volunteers at rugby clubs. What do you want? What does your department need from those clubs for this to be a success?
It needs to be a partnership, and the strategy is not just about Scottish Rugby. This is a strategy that has had input from clubs. We've got a regional plan on a page, which the clubs and schools have been very much a part of building and developing over the last year and a bit. So it's actually about how collectively we pool our resources, how we can maximise the work that we can do together in the game. And one of the things that we talked about early on was about actually changing in the culture in the game, so that it's not about us and them, it's about what collectively we can do together, because collectively we will be able to deliver much, much more than the clubs will on their own, or what Scottish Rugby will on their own. So the success of the strategy going forward will be how good we can work together.
There's different challenges for young people. There's more probably opportunity for them to be doing different things. It therefore takes a huge or a far greater number of players to put out a first 15 team than it has done in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, evidence from the consultation that we've been doing with the clubs around the season structure and consultation, some of our clubs are using over 48 players to fulfil one fixture. That is a massive pressure on clubs, and it's exactly as you say, that players are getting married, they're going to stag events, they're maybe going to Six Nations away matches, they're maybe at the World Cup. There's lots of other things happening in players' lives that they're not probably as fully committed as they were before, and that's just a real change in society. I think that we've become much more of a family orientated society, so I think there's much more expectation on specifically male players, that you can't go away at 9 o'clock in the morning and come back at 12 o'clock at night after you've been travelling to an away game or whatever.
I'm smiling because I'm remembering back. It's regular.
So there are big changes, and it is putting pressure on clubs. So it's actually, how do we actually create a competition structure where players can actually commit to? And what we've seen over the past couple of years is that at points we've had a season structure which has been 9 months long, and then when you take into account pre-season, it means that players are hardly getting any time to regenerate or to actually go on holiday or to spend with their families. So they're actually taking their own breaks in the season, which becomes a problem for the club because they can't fulfil their fixtures.
Well, as we talk about players, one bit of research that you guys have done is the playing numbers within Scotland. We've launched them, gone in public with them, and can you tell us, was the results surprising to you, or is it just this is where we are, this is a point in time, and we work from there?
I think for us it's definitely our line in the sand. Previously we've the numbers have come from CDMS, which has been like a spreadsheet where clubs and schools have inputted the numbers that they've had and the player numbers that they've had in the game, and the reality is, and very much an appreciation from myself and the regional teams, is that we appreciate that some volunteers are doing the equivalent of a full-time job within their club. So maybe it's been challenging to cleanse the data that has been within their club. So now that we've got individual registration where a player has to click on and create their own individual profile, so we've got a much better idea of the player numbers. But this for us is our benchmark. This is the line in the sand. This is where we are. And it's very much about moving on, and what we've said is that we'll work with clubs and schools to retain the number of players that we've got in the game for next season. So we're looking at 36,207. But, you know, I do appreciate that, you know, the game's got a rich history with its traditions, its values and its culture, but we can't live in the past. And the strategy is very much about looking to the future. And it's about how do we work with clubs and schools and other stakeholders to build vibrant rugby communities? You know, how do we address some of the key issues that we've got in the game today? For us, society has moved on. It's not the same as it was 15 or 20 years ago. And I think that, you know, if we're going to take the game forward, then we really have to reflect that in the game as well, that it is a different society that we're living in now. It's not the same as it was 15, 20 years ago. There are different challenges that we've got now. Schools are not turning out 18 teams at a weekend. So we need to face up to the fact that it is different. There are challenges, and it's about how collectively we come together to resolve these challenges that we've got in the game.
Your hope will therefore be, I assume, to take all the traditions, all the culture that we've seen in the past, everything that people hold emotionally dear to them as well as dear to them, put it together with your strategy to make sure that rugby in Scotland at all levels, but let's talk grassroots rugby development, is in the strongest possible position in 5 years' time. That would be the kind of blueprint. That would be
a great measure of success for us if the game was very different. And what I'm saying is, you know, we do appreciate the history and the culture in the game, the traditions in the game, and I think that they're fantastic. Having come from another team sport, I think the culture and the values in rugby are fantastic. I really love being a part of this sport. It's quite different from other sports. But we need to look at, how do we take the game forward, and how do we future-proof the game for the next 5-10 years?
Sure, from your conversations with the clubs, you talked there that you're talking to the players, your committee, the coaches, the same will be true for the women and girls side of the game, but are you seeing the same challenges? It seems to me, now you can tell us far better, that there's a growth period going on in women and girls rugby at the moment. Does that mean that there's more opportunity or different opportunities to take it where it needs to go?
I think that there are more opportunities. Previously, we had specific staff that worked on the women and girls game. What we've done through this new structure is to embed the women and girls game into the work of all of our staff in the region. So the regional directors are responsible for the delivery of the women and girls game within the regions. And if I can take an example of player development hubs, we are working to deliver player development hubs for the women and girls game. Player development hubs was previously part of the work of high performance, but it was called the Early Talent ID programme. So we've integrated it into rugby development department, called it Player Development Hubs, and we have 9 player development hubs for girls rugby that will be delivered in the region starting this month in October. And it's a nomination process from schools and clubs in terms of players. So we've had over 200 girls that have been nominated through clubs and schools to participate in the programme. We've got a whole series of regional girls series events happening within the regions, which is about looking at, you know, how do we provide a festival type event that is about developing players. It's about creating good development, learning cultures and environments within the game. It's about how do we support developing coaches, how do we support our coaches to have the right attitude on the side of the pitch. So it's not about creating that winning culture at that age, it's about actually how do we develop and encourage these young girls in the game. So I would say that we've identified the women and girls game as the biggest potential growth areas for the game in going forward. So we're already seeing fruits of that with over 200 girls being nominated for the player development hubs.
Sheila, thank you very much for coming in and joining us on the podcast. It's brilliant to hear all the exciting developments that are going to happen within your department. Everything that's been great about Scottish Rugby and the grassroots in the past getting embedded into your strategy and your department's strategy for the future. Everyone's game campaign is obviously going to be huge in the next couple of weeks, hopefully longer. Hopefully the Scotland team can go in and do as well as possible. You were mentioning earlier on that if anybody wants any more information on what your department will do, visit Scottish Rugby website. It's all on there. The strategy's there for everybody to see.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, Sheila, thank you very much, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Al.
As we said right at the beginning of the podcast, there's a huge amount going on at the moment in the world of rugby. It was a brilliant result for the women, 47-5 on South Africa. You hear from Gemma about what we can expect this Saturday. You can watch that game, Scottish Rugby's channels. I'm sure it'll be a great test match. There's obviously everything that's going on at the World Cup, and it was fantastic to hear from Ali. You've got to feel gutted for Ali to be back home, but you can hear that he's positive. He's living up to his nickname, Smiler, and he'll be watching the remainder of this tournament with interested eyes. So for you, enjoy the rest of the World Cup, enjoy everything that's going on around about it, and we'll see you again soon.